Hello, let me introduce Dirk Weil, who is one of the speakers at the JCON conference. And maybe as a short introduction to set the context, I am an author of the book Mastering RESTful Web Services with Java, and as part of the book I have a chapter where I try to give readers an overview of backend frameworks for Java, and that they can use to implement web services and applications that use them. And it was a challenging task because of course the world around us is changing very quickly, and there are new versions of everything coming every week, and there are new products coming. So I ended up basically writing about something that's more stable, and those are the standards. Mm-hmm. And so I basically wrote some kind of a brief history of what started as a Java 2 platform enterprise edition, and now we know it as Jakarta EE. And basically your talk is also about the evolution of JEE. So my first question would be, what was your motivation to give this talk?
Well, I'm doing Java EE, J2E, Jakarta EE since the beginning, and I was part of the history, if you want see it that way. We started with application servers around the millennium with J2E servers like WebLogic, and I love standards as well, because you have some guarantee that software that you write for application servers of a certain version will be runnable later on newer versions as well. And I showed that in my talk yesterday. And I presented the history from J2E over Java EE to Jakarta EE, and up to the versions where the package names got renamed. We had backwards compatibility, and that is a thing that I love. I want to have my invest in something be safe and not dependent on some weird versions or dependencies of some proprietary framework or so.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah. That was actually also one of the inputs when I asked some people what would be useful to have in the book that I'm writing, that the frustration that the developers commonly have is that at some point some breaking change comes, and you have to change a lot in your application. So how to prevent that, and then the standards are one way how to at least minimize this. And in this respect, when we're talking about Java EE and Jakarta EE, of course, in that chapter, I also had to mention Spring and Spring Boot because of their popularity. They are also a de facto standard. But one important thing that I had to put in the book is that Spring is actually a layer on top of Java EE or Jakarta EE. So, and actually some things are not even encapsulated. You use them directly. For example, the bean validation annotations are used directly. So by using a certain version of Spring, you automatically use a certain version of Jakarta EE. So that's also important for developers to know. And besides Jakarta EE, now with Eclipse Foundation, we also have another set of standards that's called MicroProfile. Mm-hmm. And in the context of integrations, this is quite interesting because it contains some specifications that are quite useful because, like for example, observability, there's specification for how to consume web services or how to do resilience. So, but there, I also heard arguments that actually MicroProfile is trying to do too much, or it contains too much, and there are some dangers connected to it, like for example the dependency on the open telemetry, which is not fully under control of the Eclipse Foundation. So I don't know how much you have experience with MicroProfile. What's your view on it? Is it something that the developers can rely on to protect their code from vendor lock-in and to make their code more future-proof?
Yeah, definitely. And I always stress the point that MicroProfile is actually can be seen as part of the Jakarta EE specification.
Yeah, there is an overlap.
Because
yeah.
the fact that we have MicroProfile is just because in 2016 and 2017 the evolution of Java EE seemed to have stopped. There was no further development in respect of microservices, cloud readiness, and so on. And MicroProfile contains all the specific, or some of the specifications that you need for that, like health checking, monitoring, telemetry. You said that, well, it was developed as a separate standard because they couldn't manage it to get it into the umbrella specification of Java EE at that time. I was on Java Land a few months ago and had a discussion with Emily Jung and Eva Grimstad about that, and I think it could be the case that MicroProfile will be integrated into Jakarta EE12 or maybe 13. I don't know exactly what the roadmap is, but at least config should be part of the base specification, because then you can get rid of all the or most of the remaining XML descriptors. And so that's a very crucial part of the overall specification. And yes, you can rely on it. If you, what do you mean with they don't have the open telemetry under their control?
I don't know the exact details, but I think it's specified by some other organization, and by somebody explained to me that by having open telemetry or as part of MicroProfile, it means that if the open telemetry standard changes in some way, it could somehow be problematic for this one. But I don't. That's why I'm asking if you heard about that as well, or if
No, and I think it's a layer on top of your application. So if that changes, if something changes at the outer world from the view of your application, and you will have to change this adapter layer, but it doesn't affect the rest of your application. So I think that is not the problem. We will have an evolution every time. MicroProfile gets released about once a year. So there will be new things, and maybe they will break something. MicroProfile, the evolution of MicroProfile accepts that there may be breaking changes in the evolution more than Jakarta EE does. So I don't think it's a problem, because it's the top layer of the application. You can change it quite easily, and keep your application up to date.
I also think it's always better to have some standard than just to avoid using a standard. Like I also had an interesting discussion about HTTP, which is definitely a standard that has been around for very long. And the guy who implements an HTTP server says there are gaps in the specification. There are some gray zones where you that can be interpreted in a various way, and then the ultimate way to test it is if it works with curl, then it's correct. So so no standard is perfect, but every standard improves the situation in a way. And
the only thing about OpenTelemetry is I'm not quite sure it's a good idea to put three things into one specification. So you have logging, you have tracing, and you have monitoring. And tracing and monitoring were separate specifications before, and they combine that into OpenTelemetry now, so it's one specification for three things. That's normally not a good idea. Yeah, but it's easy on the other on the other hand, it's easy for me as a developer. I just put that dependency in my application and have some maybe one implementation for collecting all the information that is gathered by OpenTelemetry in one point, have Prometheus and Loki and so on in one place. That's nice. It's convenient, but normally it's not a good idea to combine three different things into one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure. And one more challenge that I had when writing that chapter was that to demonstrate the principles, we accompanied the text in the book with some code examples, and for this I wanted to create a demo application which had a code that would be usable in two different runtimes, just changing the dependencies and maybe some configuration. So I started with Quarkus, and by following some tutorial, I created some simple application, and then I tried to switch it to Helidon, and suddenly I had a problem because I didn't realize that the tutorial actually suggested to use some constructs that were Quarkus specific. They made it a little bit shorter, the code, but they weren't part of the Jakarta EE specification, so they didn't work in Helidon. So the lesson from that was that actually on the architectural level, if you decide to use, for example, some framework or some application server because it has some features like, for example, the compliance to the Jakarta EE standard. This neutrality doesn't come automatically, and you have to check the actual code implementation for your application, that it really is done that way, that you use that features that you expect from it. So it's like the saying that a good architect should also write code, because if they don't, then they don't have that feedback that the ideas are really implemented correctly.
Yeah, and it's always the danger with tutorials that are supplied by the vendors. They have their product in mind, and they use, maybe without thinking too much about it, they use their own features there. And with good intentions, they want to make it easier for developers or users. But if you use those implementation-specific interfaces, classes, or whatever, then, as you said, your application is not portable anymore. We always start with a standard, and we do trainings in Jakarta EE, MicroProfile, and so on. we have a training demo project that is runnable on Quarkus and on Whitefly, for instance. And that works, but you have to keep in mind that there are some classes that work only on Whitefly and some other classes that work only on Quarkus, and you cannot use them. Yeah? So that's a problem, and it's always a problem if you have portability in mind.
Yeah. Okay. And maybe do you have anything else that comes to your mind, which or in regards with integration heavy applications implemented with Java that maybe people should know about?
Well, one interesting development is messaging. If you come to integration, messaging may be an interesting part, and we have messaging in the Jakarta EE standard by JMS, Jakarta Messaging, and that's regarded heavyweight by many people.
Yeah.
I don't think they are always right with heavyweight, because you have transaction control, you have converters for your payload in the messages, and that's something that I want to have. And if I compare that to a new standard, but I think it's not completed yet. That's in MicroProfile. It's a standalone standard MicroProfile reactive messaging, where you can adapt to messaging brokers like Kafka or AMQP and so on. And it's much more lightweight, but you miss all the features that I named before. You have no transaction on the sender or receiver part. You have no converter for your payload. So there are things that are quite interesting, but there are too heavy, too lightweight there now. Yeah? I miss something there. Yeah? So I think the ideal way would be somewhere in the middle. But it's a standalone standard. I think it could be the case because it's not mature enough to put it into the MicroProfile umbrella, or in the end in Jakarta EE.
Yeah, as we said, that's also when you put too many things in the standard, that can also be viewed as a problem. So finding the right balance may be hard.
Exactly.
It may take some time. Okay, so thank you very much for spending this time with us, and all the good in your professional endeavors.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Thank you.